You're listening to the DeCesare Group Podcast. Welcome back. I'm your host, Jim DeCesare, and I'm glad you're here. My guest today is Kelley Paul, wife of U.S. Senator Rand Paul. And as we approach the 250th anniversary of America's independence, Kelley has written 2 children's books that tell the story of America's founding and revolutionary history. Goodnight, Little American and Goodnight, Young American came out on June 2nd, and we're excited to have Kelley on the podcast. She's a graduate of Rhodes College with a degree in English and has worked as a corporate communications manager, a political media consultant, and a freelance writer. Kelley currently serves on the Board of Trustees for the Ford Theater in Washington, D.C. And by the way, these aren't her first books. In 2015, Kelley published True and Constant Friends, celebrating the inspiration we receive from the women in our lives. And in 2019, she was the co-author of Rand's 2019 best-selling book, The Case Against Socialism. Here's my conversation with Kelley Paul. Kelley, welcome to the DeCesare Group Podcast.
Thanks, Jim. I'm glad to be here.
Well, it's so exciting because we're in that time of year where we're getting ready to celebrate our 250th anniversary of this great country called the United States of America. And congratulations on these books because they're so timely, first of all, but amazing for young readers. Tell us about the books and how they came about and, why you decided to do this project.
Well, thank you so much. Yes, I'm so excited about them. I have to give a lot of credit to my daughter-in-law, who you know very well, Kate Phelps Paul. She was over with our precious grandson last summer, and he's a year and a half now. But she was like, I think we need more patriotic board books for babies. She's like, I'm just not finding anything. And she's very conservative, as you know. And she's like, you should write one. And I had a trip to D.C. the next week, and I wrote Goodnight, Little American, the beginning of it, on the plane. I kind of came up with the idea, sort of like Goodnight Moon, but to take for a baby, toddler board book with some lyrical nursery rhymes, but put in the things about America, right? You have a special birthright, so snuggle up and sleep tight. You dream in the land of the free, from sea to shining sea. That's awesome. So I started from that, and I sent it to several publishers and got some interest from Regnery. Regnery Skyhorse Books did these books, Regnery Kids. And after that, they said, we're really kind of interested in a picture book, a storybook. And I was so delighted with that because obviously with a board book, it's more simple rhymes. But when they said they were interested in me writing a book for older children, ages like 4 to 8. So some of this could be read to your kids, or older kids could read it themselves. But I took the idea of a little boy based on my grandson who is celebrating the 4th of July. And he's asking his parents, what's it all about? What are we celebrating? And his father is explaining to him in the beginning of the book, we're celebrating the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776. And his dad's trying to explain the ideals of life, liberty and the pursuit of happiness, and that we have inalienable rights. And so those are very complicated subjects, right? So the little boy's like, well, I know what happiness is. And that night he's reading with his parents, and they're showing him a map of some landmarks of the United States and where some of these things happened in American Revolutionary history. And when he goes to sleep that night, he dreams all of American Revolutionary history. So I have him starting out on the Mayflower. He becomes a pilgrim. Yeah. He meets all of our great founders and the key figures. He makes friends with Sam Adams, and he goes to the Boston Tea Party. He makes friends with Ben Franklin. He learns about electricity and flying the kite. He's there at the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and he swings on the Liberty Bell. He does all of these things. And as I was writing it, I just was really struck by how important it is for children from an early age, I think, to know and appreciate the incredible courage and resolve and vision of the founders of this country. Yeah, that's awesome. And of course, younger kids are more visually impacted. So the Good Night, Little American is more picture based, right? And the illustrations are phenomenal. Who did those? So I had 2 different illustrators for the baby toddler board book. I had Adrian Green, and they're very whimsical. Actually, both are somewhat whimsical illustrations, but then for the Goodnight Young American, I had Marika Monase, and it was great working with both of them. And I realized working with her just how exciting and visual our revolution really was. I mean, think about it, you know, just like the Boston Tea Party and these incredibly brave moments. One of my favorite illustration spreads is my little boy and his dog. He's got a little dog that travels with him on all his adventures in his dreams, and they're riding with Paul Revere, and he's got the lanterns. And I really wanted it to come to life for children because yes, these are sort of high concepts about why, you know, the founders decided to create a new country, but I wanted to distill them down so that kids could understand.
Yeah. These would be great prequels to Johnny Tremain. I don't know if you remember reading that book when you were a kid.
I did not.
But it was all about the Sons of Liberty. And
yes.
And it was a kid that was seeing it through his eyes, which is just phenomenal. And it's a book for more older kids, you know, middle school, high school kids. But, you know, writing for children requires simplicity without losing truth. How did you decide which parts of the America's founding story were most important to include and which were the hardest to explain?
Well, I decided to, keep it simple and tangible in the way children understand things. So, for example, I wanted to convey to kids and their parents for discussion and jumping off point the incredible bravery of both the Pilgrims and the colonists, the first settlers. So, of course, the little boy talks about that first winter, you know, in Massachusetts as a pilgrim and the incredible cold and being hungry and building their own houses and literally having nothing. Yeah. But they came here to be free to worship God in their own way. Right. So, you know, the impact of faith and the desire for freedom to worship is so strung through our entire revolutionary history. So I definitely emphasize that as a child. And so then when he becomes a colonist, it's sort of the same thing. We've built this town. He befriends Sam Adams and he joins the Sons of Liberty and he does these things. But I wanted the little boy to have a sense, and I want the readers to have a sense that he was witnessing the creation of a new thing, right? So the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson's words are based on Enlightenment ideals of John Locke, right? Yeah. The idea that our rights are endowed by our Creator. They are not given to us by a king. They are not given to us by any government. And so the little boy is like, you know, he's telling the reader this. He's saying, we want to be free to be our own country. We know that our rights come from God. And so when the Declaration is signed and he's in Philadelphia and he runs up and he rings the Liberty Bell, and I learned some things I didn't even know. There's a Bible verse on the Liberty Bell. It's from Isaiah, and it is, proclaim liberty throughout all the land. And so he runs up, and I tried, and my artist was incredible. I was like, make it, obviously, a bunch of men writing these concepts is not something that children could grasp. So right. I said, make it alive. Make this boy so excited that we are creating something that has never happened before. And so I said, have him run up to the steeple, have him be swinging on the Liberty Bell. Yeah. And so the illustration is just beautiful of him swinging on the Liberty Bell.
He's having a big time.
He is. He is. And so that was such an important part for me to convey to children, that this was a grand adventure, that it took incredible bravery to take these concepts, this idea of natural law, and that's another thing I try to convey, is at that time, all anyone knew in the world was monarchies and hereditary rights, right? Yeah. If you were born into the upper class, that's where you stayed. Yep. And our founders were so brave that they risked everything on the idea of self-government, individual rights. I mean, I say all the time, they were the original civil rights heroes, right? They were the original civil liberties heroes. They were people that said, we're going to create something, and we're going to tell the most powerful empire in the world that we're going to do it our own way. Yeah. And we're going to write a letter to the king. And you think about how astonishing that is and what bravery that took.
And they wanted to create something that was for the people, by the people.
Right.
Where everybody had a say.
Yes.
Yes. And, we just had elections last month, and everybody gets a say.
That's right.
So, and on a side note, for those of you listening, if you've never been to Philadelphia, go, because the Liberty Bell, Independence Hall, the house where Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, it's all right there within a few blocks of each other. Even Ben Franklin's grave is right there. And I would encourage anybody to take their family and go see that in person, because it's for all ages, and it's amazing.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And that was one of my key concepts in the book. It starts out with his parents reading him a book about famous places in the U.S., and it ends with kind of a simple map for children.
Oh, yeah.
So all of the events that I describe in the book from American Revolutionary history, whether it's Paul Revere's ride in Boston, or the signing of the Declaration of Independence in Philadelphia.
The original capital in New York.
The original capital, New York, where George Washington was sworn in. Just the idea for children, and I hope this will ignite some excitement in families to go and visit these incredible landmarks.
Yeah, they're phenomenal. And we went last summer. So our son, Justin, who's 26, will be 26, he wanted to go. So we went.
That's amazing. I love that.
We just had a great time. And I've been before as well. Talk about why you decided to write these and what you think children today most need to understand about freedom and citizenship.
Oh, goodness. Well, like I said, I was inspired by my own grandson and a desire to instill a sense of pride and patriotism in our country. Yeah. And sometimes I think in all of the, back and forth, right and left, political divide, that we need to hold on to the key founding principles of this country and the key founding principles of our Constitution, and remember how precious they are and what bravery it took to bring this country forward. I don't think there's ever been a confluence of such vision, sacrifice, resolve to create a country based on the ideas of natural law, that your rights come from your creator and not a government, in any of human history.
Right.
And so I want children to understand that. I want people to understand that you can disagree and still have great pride in our country and where we come from. It should be celebrated. I hope that children are going to remember these figures. I saw a disturbing statistic the other day that said that in the 70s and 80s, when high school seniors were asked to name 10 Americans without presidents that were the most influential and the most important famous Americans, and people like, Paul Revere and Ben Franklin, they were all in there.
Yeah, Hamilton.
And now they're not.
Yeah.
They've fallen off. And it's just, Oprah Winfrey has taken over. And, it's like these figures. And I'm like, we can't forget the incredible genius behind the creation of this country. And not just genius. It wasn't just intellectual. They sacrificed their very lives. Yeah. I think the final line in the Declaration of Independence is so poignant to me. And it is, for support of this declaration, with firm reliance on divine providence, we pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. And the 56 men who put their names on that and sent that off to the King of England, they were risking their lives. Yeah. I mean, 5 of them were imprisoned. At that point, that was treason. Yeah. That was treason, death by hanging or drawn and quartering. It was a brutal time. You would have been publicly hanged. As I said, 5 were imprisoned. 1 of their wives was imprisoned. Many died in poverty, lost their businesses. You also have to remember that at that time, a third of their fellow friends and neighbors were loyalists to the crown. So we think that we only have political divide today. Can you imagine? I mean, they were risking being outcasts, and many of them became outcasts for doing this.
It's funny. It's not funny, but you mentioned political divide today, and of course, I read a lot of history, and there's always been political divide. It's maybe a little more highlighted now because of social media and whatnot. But if you read back through our first 3 or 4 presidents, the political divide was massive.
Yes.
And I mentioned Hamilton earlier. I mean, him and Jefferson did not get along.
Yeah.
you know. And,
no.
So there's always been political divide. It's just a little more exacerbated now.
Yes. Well, with social media and television and everything else.
So, but this is phenomenal. And I know you've written across multiple subjects and genres, True and Constant Friends, and the co-author of Cast Against Socialism. What drew you specifically to children's books centered on American history and ideas? I know you've talked about it a little bit, but do you think that there's not enough of this going on right now to talk about where this country has come from?
I do. Again, I'm a little removed from it now as a grandmother. I don't have young children anymore, but that was the message I was getting from my daughter-in-law and my son that we need more, especially for young kids, to kind of get them started thinking about these heroes from our history, and certainly with America's 250th birthday coming up. My hope is that families will read these books together, and so that by July 4th, when it gets here, their kids will really have a little bit of a better understanding of what we're actually celebrating, right? It's not just fireworks and burgers on the grill. It really is celebrating a moment and a creation of a brand new country that has changed the history of the world forever.
And I know you were around and I were around when we celebrated our 200th anniversary.
Yes.
And it was, I still remember watching stuff on TV, of all the celebrations going on. And, it stuck with me. And hopefully, next month when we have the 4th of July, all the stuff that's going to be going on in Washington, D.C. I was there a month ago, and there's a lot of preparation going on right now for this big 250th anniversary. So hopefully these young people will start seeing this stuff and get inspired to understand, we may not be the most perfect nation in the world, but we're better than all the rest, right?
Right. I mean, until the creation of this country, you didn't have a country that was based on the individuals, people's with right to vote and self-government. I will say, remembering the 200th, it was a simpler time, wasn't it?
A lot simpler.
When I was growing up in Russellville, and I remember it so well. I was probably, 10 years old, I think, around the time. And I begged my dad to take us to Washington because it was just like everything was all about it. I feel like there was more hype back then. Yeah. And I guess before people had so many things to do, communities really got involved. So my community, Russellville, oh my goodness, we all had costumes. I had a long dress from 1776. We wore the style. We put on our own pageant in town. Even my mother, the grown-ups were dressed up. Yeah. We put on this big festival. Everybody was excited. The bicentennial, it was like all anybody talked about for months. And I remember just having so much fun with it and having this long dress made for it. And I wish I was seeing a little bit more of that now in communities.
If you also remember, I believe that was the year of the Summer Olympics too, when we crushed. The United States was just killing it in the Summer Olympics. So there was a lot of stuff going on that got people inspired to celebrate the United States of America.
It was a great time to be a kid.
Yeah. So let's talk about, as being an author and a spouse of a U.S. Senator, you've had a unique view on public service. And has that perspective influenced the way you write about patriotism, leadership, civic responsibility, especially now that you're a grandparent? I mean, you kind of have a front row seat to some of these things that are going on in our nation.
I do. It's not always pretty.
Well, hey, it's not always bad either.
That's right. No, it's a huge honor to be in this position, and Rand takes it incredibly seriously. He is so grateful for the trust that the people of Kentucky have put in him, and he takes his role and his responsibility so seriously. And we just feel honored to be out there every day. I've met some amazing people, and I think that really does, to your point, I've met people from all over the country and all over our state. And I do think what we all have in common, even if we have very different political ideals about how to get there and what the right way to get there is, we all really truly want what's best for each other. And we all do carry a sense of pride as Americans in what our country is and what it can be. And I'm always encouraged by that. You know, if I ever get down and I'm looking at too much social media or just, seeing what the media says, my antidote to that is to attend events with Rand, to go to places, to talk to people, whether it's, a political picnic or a Rotary Club somewhere or anything, and just talk to people. And then I'm reminded of just what good intentions most people have for each other.
Yeah. And that's right. I mean, we all have our differences. We don't, nobody agrees with each other 100%. And
right.
But I do think you're correct that we all have what's in the best interest for this country, and we don't want to be any other country for sure. Because
absolutely,
even countries like Ireland, I'll use them as an example. It's a great place to visit, but their socialism is alive and well in Ireland.
Yes,
100%. And they, you want to own a car, it's going to cost you 50% tax to own a car.
Yes.
In Ireland.
At one point in Denmark, it was 100%.
Yeah.
And people protested so much, but really most young people, they don't own cars. You always see these pictures of people in Denmark. It's freezing cold and they're all on bicycles.
Yeah.
They're paying 60% tax at $60,000 a year.
Yeah.
So their life, some people like Bernie Sanders or whatever will be like, oh, it's so wonderful, everything's free. And I'm like, well, it's not free. Nothing's free.
That's right.
And they give up a lot for that safety net. And then at the same time, once you see people that have enough money, they're still buying private insurance, because once the government's telling you what to do, everything's always not perfect, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're taking what you get.
It reminds me of a quote that someone sent me, one that said, all free men are not equal and all equal men are not free. So,
yep.
And if you want to be part of the all equal men are not free, or women, go to one of those countries.
Right.
And you'll find out pretty quickly. And you talked about the divisiveness in this country, and it's been going on forever. Do you believe children's literature can help create a shared sense of national identity or common values? Just making them aware of what's going on and what has happened in the past?
Yes, absolutely. And I think we're kind of missing that now. Everything is, even in young kids' education, it's all about your identity or who you are, and not enough about a shared identity. My grandparents, my mom was first generation American. My grandparents came from Sweden and Ireland. And my great-grandfather's name was Thor, okay? He's a Swedish man named Thor Wessel. Do you know the first thing he did when he landed in the United States? He changed his name to Al, because Thor was just too Swedish. He wanted to be an American. He didn't want to be a Swedish American. He wanted to be an American. My grandmother had to quit school at 12 in Ireland. She knew real poverty. Like, her father was an invalid after World War I. She literally was scrubbing floors as a child maid. She got to this country, worked as a maid her whole life, and thought she died and gone to heaven. She said she was the most patriotic person you've ever met. And again, it was a shared identity as an American. It wasn't, I want to be a Swedish American, I want to be an Irish American. It was, I want to be an American.
Well, my grandfather on my father's side came over on a boat called the America from Italy. And he ended up marrying a first-generation Irish woman. So, and we still have those connections. You and I are good examples where we still have folks that were close in our family, grandparents that immigrated from another country because this was the place for the American dream.
Right. The American dream, but hard work, right?
Yeah.
Just walk, like my grandmother, it wasn't like you got any kind of welfare or anything. It's like, I remember my grandmother telling me she got sick with rheumatic fever like after she'd been here about a year, she was working for a very wealthy family in New York. She worked for a lot of like very rich people in New York as a maid. You know, those movies you've seen where all the Irish maids are living in a big mansion. That was my grandmother. And she got sick with rheumatic fever, and she hid it from her employers. And my grandmother was super dramatic. She'd always be like, "Oh, Kelley, I had the thirst. I was drinking from the flower pots. I didn't want them to see me in the kitchen. I didn't want them to know I was sick." And I was like, "Why wouldn't you want them to know you're sick, Grandma?" She said, "Oh, I'd be departed. I'd be departed if I couldn't work. It'd be a great shame. I'd be so humiliated." And it wasn't like she was angry or thought that was unjust. But you know what? People are good. At a time when that really was if you couldn't work, you were deported.
Yeah.
You know what happened when they found out she was sick? They put my grandmother in the roadster. They had a convertible roadster, and they had their son drive her out to their mansion in Newport by the sea so she could recuperate for the summer.
That's awesome.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
And she thought she died and gone to heaven. She's like, "I'm waking up every morning looking at the sea."
Yeah, at the beach. That's awesome. That's a great accent, by the way. You do a great job at that. Any more books in the future?
You know, I never say never.
I mean, you've got other parts of history to cover.
I
you know,
do.
The migration out west and
You're right.
Kentucky.
You are right. I do love writing. I worked with Rand on the case against socialism, co-wrote that with him. I also worked a lot with him on Deception, the great COVID cover-up.
That was a great book.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we had Rand on, talked about that. So.
Thank you. Yeah, it really was. And, you know, what was done
the
to
research was amazing.
Oh, he was so meticulous with that. He has all the facts, believe me.
Yeah.
So that was a great book to work together on. We like to write together. We kind of have our little system. You know, he'll write some stuff, send it to me. I'll edit, add to it. We kind of go back and forth. This is, as I said, my first foray into children's book writing. So I don't know. If I come up with a good idea and someone gives me an opportunity, I certainly will.
I think there's a whole United States history that could be covered here.
Good idea, Jim. I can take my little boy and his dog, and he can sort of grow up a little and
he can be
do
on
other
a wagon
things.
train somewhere, or
I like it. I like it.
You know, and I should, you know, I mentioned this in the show open, but you've worked in communications. This isn't new to you.
Right. And I did right out of college. I was an English major, and I worked in the telecommunications industry and marketing communications. So I wrote executive speeches. I put on a lot of big events from the speech writing side and from the communications side for Nortel Networks and Sprint back in the day. And then I married this cute curly-headed doctor named Rand Paul, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to be a stay-at-home mom. And I did some freelancing, but mostly I just stopped to raise our kids. And then one day he said, "You know, I think I might run for the U.S. Senate." And then my writing skills came back in handy.
Yeah, it always helps. All right, let's talk about where people can get the book. It's out now.
Yes.
So I know you could probably get it at most of your normal locations, but go ahead and talk about that.
So everywhere books are sold, you know, it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere books are sold, you can find it. I think it's on christianbooks.com. So just be looking for it. We're also going to have a really fun party and book signing here in Bowling Green. So any local listeners, it's going to be on June 25th. At 3:30, and it's going to be downtown in a beautiful historic home of Boxwood.
Oh, nice.
The Republican Women's Club is hosting it, but it's open to the public, and I'm going to do a book signing, and it's just going to be a really nice event. So I'll be posting more details about that on my social media coming soon.
And if you don't know where Boxwood is, it's directly across the street from the Warren County Public Library.
That's right.
So it's exactly where it is. And we'll put a link to the publisher where you can buy it from the publishing company in the show notes. So if anybody wants to get the book, just click that link and it'll take you right to the page, and you can order one or both.
Yes. Depending on what age group you're looking for, they are both available now.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations on putting these together. I think this is wonderful, and I think it's extremely important that young people understand the history of this great country.
Thank you, Jim. I do too.
Kelley Paul, thanks for being on the DeCesare Group Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks again to Kelley Paul, author of Good Night Little American and Good Night Young American, for joining us this week on the DeCesare Group Podcast. And thank you for checking us out. If you like what you hear, share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave us a review and share your feedback with us. You can also follow the DeCesare Group across all of our social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, and YouTube. And you can even subscribe to our weekly newsletter, SOKI Economic Development and Business News, by going to our website, thedecesaregroup.com. The DeCesare Group Podcast is produced by the DeCesare Group, a public relations and consulting firm based in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Our engineer and fine American is Justin DeCesare, with content contributions from Brooke Mattingly. The DeCesare Group Podcast is researched by Amy DeCesare. I'm Jim DeCesare, inviting you to join us again next time for the DeCesare Group Podcast.